Brad Pitt isn't stepping away. He's shifting gears. Not with a dramatic exit or with a farewell tour, but he's approaching the next chapter of his career in the same way a veteran driver takes a final lap, with focus, clarity, and no need to prove anything. Brad has called it the last leg of his career, the last semester. Not because he's done necessarily, but because he's choosing differently now. Fewer roles, more intention, and less noise. And his newest film, F1, feels like the perfect metaphor for this, right? A story about speed, about aging, and what's left when you're not chasing the win anymore. But the more compelling story is the one happening off script, right? When the cameras aren't around. Because Brad Pitt's real transformation, from heartthrob to producer, from escapism to introspection, is really a timeless story that has a lot of wisdom to unpack. A man learning when to press forward and when to let go. Let's take a closer look. William Bradley Pitt grew up in a conservative household in Springfield, Missouri. His father ran a trucking company, and his mother was a school counselor. By all accounts, his upbringing was a stable one. Church on Sundays, discipline and modesty. But Brad was restless. Just 2 weeks before graduating with a journalism degree, he dropped out and drove west to LA, chasing a whisper he couldn't quite explain. He studied acting while handing out flyers in a chicken suit. He took odd roles, got rejected, but what he had, even then, was presence, a quiet magnetism. He once said, quote, "I always liked those characters who didn't say much." It's telling that he gravitated towards stillness even before he knew why. Then came Thelma and Louise, and suddenly Brad Pitt was everywhere. But interestingly, something he said years later really stands out. He said, quote, "I'm not someone who's comfortable with everything being out in the open. I'm not comfortable with being that exposed." That tension between the allure of fame and the discomfort of being known never quite left him. The Stoic philosopher Zeno once wrote, "Man conquers the world by conquering himself." We have mentioned this quote before, but it's really, really powerful. And for Brad, that conquest wouldn't come from success. It would come from facing what success tried to cover up. The 90s turned Brad Pitt into a global icon. Interview with a Vampire, Legends of the Fall, Fight Club. He had it all. And to top it all off, he had the whole package. The looks, the talent, the acclaim. But inside, something was cracking. Behind the camera, he struggled with substance abuse, struggled with a feeling of hollowness that he couldn't quite put his finger on. And it wasn't just the pressure, it was the disconnection from himself, from others, from anything stable in his life. He later admitted that he was drinking too much, numbing himself too often, and barely present in his own life. He said, quote, "I spent years with low-grade depression, and it wasn't until I embraced that, until I tried to understand it, that I could move past it." And that's not weakness, right? That's clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. If you realize this, you will find strength." Brad started looking inward, not to fix his image, but to understand himself without an image. And that shift really changed everything for Brad. In 2001, he launched Plan B Entertainment with Jennifer Aniston. And after their split, he kept it going. At first, people didn't really take it seriously. Another actor with a vanity project, right? But Pitt quietly surrounded himself with filmmakers who had something to say. He wasn't chasing blockbusters, he was doubling down on a bet that people want stories with a sense of meaning. Then Plan B produced The Departed. Then 12 Years a Slave. Then Moonlight. Over time, it became one of the most respected production companies in the entire industry. Not for the flash, but for the substance. This wasn't about him being seen, it was about what he was helping create, even when his name wasn't on the screen. Seneca once wrote, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." You've probably heard some version of that quote before, and it's so true. It's hard to find a better example than Brad Pitt's second act of his career. One built not on attention, but on intention. What follows was a fall from grace. In 2016, his marriage to Angelina Jolie collapsed. There were allegations, there were custody battles, public silence. For the first time in decades, Brad sort of disappeared. He entered rehab, he quit drinking, he took up sculpting, and he started therapy. He told GQ, "The victories have been the personal things. Those are the things I find most beautiful now. Not the roles, not the headlines, it was really those inner victories." He had spent years building a life that looked perfect from the outside, and only when it shattered did he begin to understand what was actually real. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And this really connects back to that Marcus Aurelius quote about outside events. Brad had spent decades controlling how the world saw him, but the real growth came when he stopped trying to. In recent years, Brad Pitt has started aging out of the roles that once defined him. And rather than fight it, he has embraced it. His characters now reflect where he is: men searching, aching, and adapting. Think Ad Astra, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and now F1, where he plays a veteran racer guiding a new generation. He's no longer the star of every scene, and maybe that's the point, right? His performances now come with more space, with more patience and less of that noise. Like someone who's not chasing moments, just living in them. Cato the Younger once said, "He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man." And Brad Pitt, in this chapter of his life, is acting like someone who has nothing to prove, which might be why he's more compelling than ever. Brad Pitt's journey isn't about perfection, it's about refinement. Not the kind that you show off, the kind that takes years to develop. The kind that happens when no one is watching. And that's tough in today's world. So what can we learn from this? Number 1, question what you chase. Brad Pitt had everything that our culture tells us to want. It didn't make him whole. Ask yourself what you're chasing and why. Number 2, withdraw to rebuild. When his life fell apart, Brad didn't rush to fix the image. He retreated, he got quiet, and he did the inner work he needed to do before coming back. Number 3, build things that outlast you. Whether it's a production company like Brad started or something more specific to you, choose to contribute and not just to perform. Number 4, let go of what no longer fits. Just because something brought you success in the past doesn't mean you owe it your future. And number 5, find stillness in the motion, even in the chaos of life. Whether that's divorce, fame, failure, there's space for clarity if you're willing to just slow down a little bit. So as F1 hits theaters, here's something to think about. Where in your life have you been racing without direction? What image of yourself are you still trying to protect long after it stops serving you? What would happen if you gave yourself permission to shift gears a little bit, to pull over, reassess, and choose a new way forward? Brad Pitt doesn't pretend to have everything figured out, right? But that's what makes his story resonate so much. He just keeps adjusting, letting go, and paying attention to what his life is trying to tell him. That's not just growth. That is philosophy in motion. If this connected with you in any way, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if there's another figure whose story deserves a closer Stoic look, drop their name below. We're always listening. And if you're interested in more content like this, click this next video. I think you'll find it really interesting.